G'day, people, and welcome to another episode of Fantasy Chats with Checkers and Heff. Round 10, a bit of carnage, but Checkers joins me to break it all down and talk about what we're going to do about it. How was your weekend, mate?
Yeah, good. A few positives and a few negatives. It was like last week we rode the highs of the pod players going bonkers, but this week some of them went well and some of them went bad. So it's an interesting week to look at the results. So I'm going to go straight to the rankings and just say that I dropped 4,000 spots on the weekend down to 7,984. So we're almost outside the top 8,000 there, which is a bit grim when I was in the 300s at round 5. I nailed the captain for the first time in a while. I think I've nailed 2 captains this year. So nailed the VC on Geordie Dawson, which was great. They're flying on Saturday afternoon. And then Saturday night I had Sardell Hooley on my field for a 28. So that's when it went severely downhill. Thought I could roll the rookie for a week to replace Jaden Short, and it just didn't work out. So yourself, I think you might have jumped me on ranks now. We might have officially done the changeover, the changing of the guard.
Yeah, I have. I did decline a little bit in rank, but I ended up with a 2140 for the weekend. But I only dropped probably, I think, 250 spots, so down to 5,068. Kind of like the opposite story. You talked about the pods before, but it was like a few of the more popular players, like your Jordan Dawsons and stuff like that, the guys that I don't have. And Rowan Marshall was a very popular trade-in as well, which I didn't go with. They're the things that probably screwed me a little bit because, if the majority of the AFL fantasy population has those guys, then you're going to kind of drop a little bit. I think people that didn't have Jason Horne Francis kind of rocketed past me this weekend as well. So it kind of makes sense that a few bits and pieces like that happened as well. But pretty happy with the rank. I'm not going to lie, I'm happy that I've overtaken you, but I do feel for you over the weekend when you finally nailed a good captain score and you still go backwards. So my captain story was I had the captaincy on Cherry all week, but then I had the VC on Bailey Smith, and I found it very hard not to take the 123 that was in the bank on the Saturday, and ended up costing me about 30, 40 points, but not the end of the world. He was my second best scorer on the field, so you can't really complain about that, right?
Yeah, in a week where Tom De Koning would have been traded out of a lot of sides, you've had Rowan Marshall, Tristan Xerri, and Toby Nankervis all score 150 plus. I thought I was flying because I traded in Luke Jackson and he scored a 98 on the Saturday. And then come Sunday, the 3 rucks that were also on the table for potential trade-ins all scored 150. So that was an interesting point for me. But yeah, we were saying on last week's pod, you'd take anything over 100 for a VC. So for 123 from Bailey Smith, I think you would have been clapping your hands and going, this is great. But yeah, the extra 30 points, you go, over the space of 10 rounds, those 30 points, 300 points. And that's what, can make 5,000 sort of ranking spots sometimes. So it's those 30-point differences that sort of make or break a season, and they hurt a little bit. But might sound a bit greedy when you're going, I copped a 128 or whatever as my captain. But when you could have copped the 150, they're what separate the hats from the no hats.
Yeah, that's correct. The only, silver lining is that I did have Tristan Cherry captain in my keeper league team, which is probably the thing I'm most focused on, considering I'm top of that and I want to beat all my footy mates playing that. So, it was a bit of a win-win situation, really, so it wasn't too bad. All right, let's get stuck into it. Do you want to talk about Supercoach? I'm off my Supercoach team.
I'm glad you almost skipped Supercoach because my ranking's 70,000 now. So I don't know how people are in the comp, but I might actually come last. I might come dead last in this. I didn't think it was possible, but it's not going well.
Maybe you should make that your goal to try to actually finish dead last and see how low you can actually rank. Make the worst trades each week.
Melbourne Cup sweep if you come last to get your money back or something.
Yeah. Try to make the worst trades you could possibly make each week. You probably just have to trade in donuts to your whole team and you should be fine. But I Thursday night I forgot to take Henry Hustwaite off my field. Lockout rush. My son has soccer training after school, all that sort of stuff. So just completely forgot to do it, which cost me, and that was in my utility spot as well. So there's no emergency for utility. So basically,
just cop the donut.
Oh, it dropped off, you know what I mean? But you kind of, in Supercoach, you got the best 18 out of 19. And so whatever 18 was on the field, I just had to kind of take. So I didn't get to play the rookie roulette with the loopholing, unfortunately. So, oh well. I'm still in the top 10,000, but just hanging on in there, so not great. Anyway, let's get stuck into the pods of the week. Who you got?
I've got a couple pods that all been mentioned previously by myself on this podcast, so we're just re-rinsing old pods this week. I'll start with the smaller ones. Sam Doherty had another monster score in the VFL on the weekend. I think it was 160 the week before and maybe 140 on the weekend or 138. I can't remember off the top of my head. But another 35-plus disposal game. Carlton lost to Sydney, obviously. We could see some changes. We could see they're just outside the 8 and maybe need some stability in their side. I said he was a potential pickup for a draft league, but if he comes back in and his role is Sam Doherty of old, he is quite cheap. And if you give him 2 to 3 weeks to lock in some job security and some okay scoring, we know the scoring's there. It's just the job role, really. I think if he gets his role off halfback, Doherty could average 90 plus very easily just by turning up each week. But just needs to not be the sub, needs to not get dropped every 3 to 4 weeks to give a young guy a crack. So if he sees some stability in the Carlton side, I'll just Doc watch is back open. It's still there. Might be one for 2 to 3 weeks' time where we really start talking about putting him in your side. But I'm checking his VFL scores very tightly each week. Ed Richards and Matt Richards got brought up last week. They scored 103 and 113, so probably still on the radar, but getting out of price range at the moment. I think they're both ticked over the 1 million mark. Might be 995 from memory, but one of them is definitely over the 1 million mark. Putting them both in the same basket is a bit hard to separate them. I wouldn't be able to tell you which one to pick over if you had to pick between them, but maybe Kennedy because he's got forward DPP.
That's probably what I'd lean at. Just on the Doc thing, yeah, I do like the pick. It's just what we need to see at AFL level is him playing like a halfback role and not on a wing or whatever. But I think that is actually a possibility to happen at AFL level. Like, it makes sense to just, especially if their season's kind of fading a little bit as well, like let him just go sit across halfback, pad the stats, and probably retire at the end of the year, quite possibly. Like I reckon that could be a serious play going forward. I traded him in for peanuts in my keeper league team. It was a multiplayer trade, but it effectively turned out to be. I think it was either Sam Banks or no, who else? Billy Dowling. Sorry, it was Billy Dowling for Doherty in the end because the guy who owned him just didn't wanted to get something out of him, and so yeah, Billy Dowling for Doherty. And I've just got him sitting on my bench waiting for him to return potentially round 24 for a retirement game. And we all know what players are like in their retirement games. They tend to go off. I had Brendan Goddard in the, I think it was the 2018, round 23, his final game, and that pretty much won me a Keeper League grand final. So I do like the thought process behind it. You got any more pods for consideration?
Yeah, I'll just say Matt Kennedy is forward DPP. So if you are looking to trade Jason Horne Francis this week, I know some people are talking about holding him because he has a bye. But if you are looking to trade him, could be a sneaky little option. You'll need a little bit more cash, but if you can generate that cash, he's there. Another forward that has been mentioned that could be a potential trade for Jason or Francis is Cozzy Pickett. I did trade him in after speaking about on the pod, and I think he dished up a 60 that week, but he's gone back-to-back tons the last 2 weeks. So it was 65 and 64, and it was pretty grim areas after I traded him in. I thought, oh no, this is not going to be very good, but that was against Richmond and West Coast, the two teams which he should have gone bonkers against and kicked a bag of goals. But against Hawthorn and Brisbane, two of the stronger teams in the comp, he's gone back-to-back tons. So 107 and 101. Has Sydney, St Kilda, Collingwood and Port in the next 4. I guess it's a bit of an up-and-down fixture for a small forward who rotates in the mid. But what's he priced at now? I think it's pretty similar to Horne Francis, 848K, which... just checking Horny's price is 847K, so 1K difference. So it could be a straight sideways swap there. Cozzy Pickett, very point of difference, 3.9% owned. So if you want to go out the box and get a real, unique forward, that would be my suggestion. But
well, you made the point of we're going to need to do something in our forward lines. We've both got Horne Francis, and I think we've both got Macrae. And I reckon majority of the AFL fantasy community have those two players in their team. So we're going to have to get creative in those spots. And this is kind of where my trade plans come into play. And one of the pods I'm currently looking at, and it's crazy that this guy is a pod considering he's a all-Australian player and one of the best fantasy forwards in the competition. I think he was the number 1 last year. And the guy I'm talking about is Dylan Moore. who I am angling very hard to get into my side this week. Put up one of his better scores for the season. He was subbed out a couple of weeks ago and did nothing, but bounced back this week with an 87-point game. He gets time in the midfield, and there's talk of John Newcombe being in a moon boot this week, so he could be coming out the side. So there might be a little bit of extra mid-clock for him. At the moment, though, he is priced pretty cheaply. I've just got to look it up here just to be certain, but I'm pretty sure he's in the
696K.
There you go. So 696K at the moment. So if you go down from Macrae, for example, you're banking over 200K there. And, that could get me, well, to me, it looks like it could actually get me up to, a midfield gun. If I was to trade Horne Francis and use a bit of DPP action, I got Christian Petrarca in the midfield. I got Bailey Smith sitting in my midfield there as well. So and Ryan Marich, I think as well, can move around too. So a lot
of people would have Levi Ashcroft as well, which is an easy DPP option now too. So
yeah, another one that you can just kind of shift around, and with that downgrade from Macrae to Moore, it allows you to go up big from Horne Francis. And whatnot. So that's probably my pot of the week would be Dylan Moore, although I suspect he won't be that pot. He's already up to 17% owned. I didn't actually check that before this week because it was a lot lower.
I wonder if he started higher though, because I feel like Dylan Moore at the start of the season was in like maybe 30% of teams. He had a good year last year. It was a career best year.
Yeah, true. Well, he's not in many of the top 100 teams, that's for sure. So could be a good little.
Do you reckon
to go forward?
He's had a couple off weeks the last few weeks? Do you reckon Jack Gunston in the side might affect his role or steal some goals off him that we usually see Dylan Moore kick? He's been a little bit less selfish, handing off.
Only kicked one on the weekend. Only kicked one on the weekend and still scored the 87. So there's some positives there. But you're probably right. I reckon it's probably more to just do with Hawthorn in general not being on top of their game, move the ball a lot quicker, or trying to move the ball a lot quicker this season. That kind of skips him a little bit, but I don't know. I just think for that price, you can't really go too wrong with it because you're not paying up for it either. You know what I mean? So, and he's going to be better than a rookie. That some people still have Cleary on field and stuff like that. And if you're happy to play Levi Ashcroft in your forward line, I reckon you'd be pretty happy to play Dylan Moore in your forward line as well.
Fair enough. Yeah, I think his best is probably a 90-plus average. His worst is probably where he's at right now, which is a 70 average.
Yeah, correct.
And he's coming off an 87, which is above that 70 average. So, yeah, if he can dish out those 85 to 95s, he's not one with a massive ceiling, which is my only issue. I just can't, unless he kicks a bag of 10, which we don't really see very often.
Yeah.
Can't see many of the Hawks players going 120 plus. Will Day and Newcombe are the ones, but they rack up the tackles and the marks. So,
yeah. Well, I guess the other thing is as well, though, there's not a lot of cash generation going on. I'm looking at my bench, and I think I only had 3 of my bench actually playing on the weekend. I had Finn O'Sullivan, Christian Moraes, and Caden Cleary playing. And looking at I've still got Lucas Campriali sitting there, Connor Stone, Harry Boyd, Hugh Boxall, Jed Buslinger. But the thing is, if you look at the rookies that are available also, there's just nothing there that you can consistently rely on. People talk about heading into the bye rounds with 30 green dots, and a lot of this time means sidewaysing some of your rookies at this point of year and stuff like that. But there's no one there I'm really confident in that are going to stick around. So I'm just not doing it. I'm just leaving my bench bare until the bye rounds actually come around, and I'll try to maybe sideways 3 rookies in that week to pad out my side. At least I'm more confident in that 3-week gap than trying to pick out 4 or 5 weeks ahead from now to kind of work it all out. But the point I'm trying to make is sometimes you need to do these Dylan Moore type moves, gun down to fallen premium type thing to free up that cash, because there's not a lot of other ways to do it. There's not a lot of cash sitting on my bench. I think Caden Cleary is the best one, who's sitting at 500K. But even going down to a 300K rookie, you're only banking 200, and it's still very hard to get up. So, yeah, that's kind of my thought process. But we'll leave the pods for now. Get into everyone's favourite part of the show, the hot takes. What do you got for me this week, Checkers?
I haven't really copped a good one yet. I'm just going to say there's some trade-in players that are really highly traded in the last 2 weeks. We saw Philippou as one of the most traded-in players last week on the back of a 70, or was it a 60 even? It wasn't a monster score, but they traded him in based on maybe his ceiling. Like traded him, a lot of people trading in Philippou based on what he could do, but they hadn't seen it yet, and he dished up a 50. And I'm just worried. Everyone trading in Kadeen Coleman on the back of a 73. Yes, we know, 400 plus days ago he was dishing up tons and looked like a great halfback flanker, but a lot changes in 400 days, and Zorko and Fletcher still kept their role on the weekend. So I'm just going to say Kadeen Coleman. That'll be my hot take. Is Kadeen Coleman will be one of the most traded in players this week, and will score below 70. We'll go down in his scoring. So I'm just worried on people trading in without seeing the proof in the pudding yet. So that's my hot take.
I don't mind that one. Yeah. It's always the way. As soon as we probably put something out there, it goes the absolute opposite way. I didn't actually look at the show doc from last week to actually see how we went, but I'm assuming we got them all wrong anyway, so it doesn't really matter. My hot take, I reckon, for the week is I had a few to think about, but the one I'm kind of liking at the moment is don't fall into the trap of thinking West Coast and Richmond are going to be guaranteed big scores for your teams. Like we see a lot of people saying they're playing Richmond this weekend, or they're playing West Coast this weekend. They're due for a big score. But over the past few weeks, we've seen a lot of the gun midfielders. It's probably more true for the defenders and stuff like that. But the gun midfielders actually struggle against teams like Richmond and struggle against teams like West Coast. Like if we look at North Melbourne over the weekend playing against Richmond, like Harry Shields only got the 102, LDU didn't ton up, Tom Power didn't ton up, George Wardler got the 83, Josh Simpkin, who we were raving on earlier, is kind of stinking it up. And then if we look at the St Kilda mids as well, like Jack Sinclair played across the fence and had huge, but like Jack Steele struggled, Jack Macrae struggled. I know he did cop the punctured lung in the end, but even Isaiah Wanganeen-Miller played a lot of midfield time, really couldn't get a run on. And I feel like that's been truer and truer over the last few weeks. Like if I look at my numbers on the web, keeperleaguepod.com.au, shameless plug, I've got a table there that's points against by player type. And if you look at over the last 5 games for midfielders, West Coast are actually the toughest team for midfielders to score against. And Richmond are the 6th toughest. And I think it is because they are all out focused on not getting smashed, like defence. They kind of move to negate opposition midfielders and kind of flood areas where midfielders could win the stoppage and stuff like that as well, to kind of stop the bleeding for their own teams, you know what I mean? So they're very defence focused everywhere on the ground. So I think it does hinder them. I think they let the kind of halfbacks and that sort of stuff do their thing, but then further up the ground, they're very much focused on shutting them down. So hot take is don't rely on Richmond and West Coast as an opponent to produce good scores for your players.
They could be so hit and miss. You could have a forward kick 6 goals that doesn't kick many goals normally, or a midfielder kick 3 goals that doesn't normally hit the scoreboard, and you see their score go bonkers against a Richmond or a North Melbourne or a West Coast. But then you can see other guys just get the most random tag, or maybe change their role slightly, or just get completely shut out of the game, and you can't really predict it. It's really hard sometimes. Great for goal kicking when Richmond cop a 100-point loss, and you might have a random forward on the other team kick a bag of 8 or kick a bag of 4 even is a pretty good bag these days. There's not many bags of 8 going around unless you're Jesse Hogan or Jeremy Cameron.
Yeah.
But it's been very hard to predict. I would have predicted that Cozzy Pickett would have kicked a few goals against Richmond and West Coast and turned up, and he scored his 2 lowest scores of the season. So traded him in thinking juiciest fixture of all time, and it turned out to not be the case. So instead, it was all the halfbacks that went bonkers those weeks for Melbourne. It was the Salem, Jake Bowie had a couple tons, Petrarca went okay, but it was very hard to predict.
Yeah, no, I agree. So it's like, it's just going through the last few weeks. It's just not set in stone that players go big against this side. So I'm just trying to go through a few here, but it's always a bit up and down. Like last few weeks, I feel personally, I've been banking on big scores against these teams, and it's just not happening. So just
the
one
one
thing
you can say though is that if the team is winning, the fantasy scores are better. Like we see when teams are winning, scoring goes up 10 points, or I think there's a stat, and I can't remember the exact stat. It was a couple of years ago. It was like 10 or 11 points better going most teams were when they're winning. Bulldogs won a couple in the trot, and last week we were raving on about how much better the Bulldogs are playing with Bontempelli, but probably it was more likely because they were winning games by 70, 80, 90 points. So, When they're winning, obviously, if you're Collingwood playing Richmond, you'd assume the players across the board get the bump. It doesn't mean that Nick Dacos is going to have the bump, but it means across your whole team, you're probably going to have a 10 to 15 point increase on average across the 24 players that you're rolling out, or 22 players you're rolling out.
Yeah, 100%. Anyways, that was a bit of a long-winded one, but we'll move on from it. We'll move on to the trade plans, I guess, and then we'll wrap it up. What are you thinking about doing this week?
Well, I don't think I can keep Horne Francis and Macrae as the issue. Maybe Macrae, maybe you keep one of them. Just hamstrings worry me because they can say they're 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then they turn into longer. And Horne Francis has got a history of them, and he's got the issues that he's had in the past. He had the surgery in the back of his knees and everything in his first year. So who knows? Have to bring it forward. I've raved on about Matt Kennedy the last 2 weeks. I think it's going to be him. And then I've still got guys like every week on this podcast I say I'm going to get rid of Sam Davison and Hugo Garcia, and then come selections I just can't get rid of them because other issues arise. So they're still just sitting on the bench, just collecting dust, scoring 65s every week. So if we can get rid of one of them this week, that'd be great. But hopefully no other selection carnage at the table. Who knows?
Yeah, no. Hopefully that's the case for you. But it sounds like there could be a fair bit of carnage coming into this week. Like all we need is one other thing to go wrong. So I think everyone's pretty much got 2 forced trades. If you're one of those unlucky,
it might be handy to keep for the buyers because we're talking about not a lot of green dots on your bench. And if you can keep a 65, if you can keep a Garcia or a Davidson for 65 just to cover on the buyers, it might not be the worst thing in the world. So
yeah,
it's useless cash sitting on the bench. They're both 600 plus K. That could be getting spent elsewhere. But if they're not going to go up or down in price too much, it could be a handy little stopper just to have for the bye weeks. I don't know. Yeah,
I don't know. The other thing as well, like we've all got forced trades on field as well. Then you have more cash on the bench. You know, if you're going to trade off your Garcias and your guys like that on the bench as well. So I don't know. It's a tricky situation. My trade plans, I think, I'm going to do the Dylan Moore down. I'm pretty set on that one. I'm going to back him into, like you said, worst case, I'm going to get what I get now, but I'm only paying $680K for him. So pretty happy with that. Then on the other end, I'll trade, so that's Macrae down. I think I'll trade Horne Francis up to a primo mid, but I don't know who that is. Like I like Zach Merritt's got a really high break in, but he comes up against Richmond, which we just talked about, haven't been the easiest. Like I looked at his numbers as well. Like against West Coast, he only scored 82. You know, like it's strange like that. So I need to bring a big dog in. Do I go real unique and just go with the George Hewitt or something like that? Because it's like, or have I missed the boat on that? Do you reckon? The obvious one is Jordan Dawson, but he comes up against West Coast this week, so it's no guarantee. I feel like every time you expect Jordan Dawson to go big, like against the Power, he didn't. I kind of expected him to go big last week against Collingwood because he had a good record against them. He plays the G really well every time. So I was more confident in that, but I'm less confident, in them home against West Coast. So I don't know. A big dog midfield is what I'm going to do anyway. I'm just yet to decide who it's going to be. That's all.
I went Tom Green last week and he dished up the 78, which is a bit painful for the week. But what I do like is I backed Tom Green's consistency in across the years. So if you're going to go someone, you sort of want to, even if they have an off week this week, you sort of want to know that they're going to do 100 plus for the rest of the year. So you can take the risk sometimes and you can go really point of difference and get too much in your own head. But I'd back Tom Green's form over the last 3 years to say that he's going to bounce back across the next 5 weeks. Hard because you really want that first week. If you're going to go primo, you really want that first week to feel good.
Yeah, exactly. And he's another player I do like. I've got him in Supercoach as well, but he's another one to think about. Maybe even like Nick Dacos against North Melbourne. He might be someone to finally bring into my team after a couple lean weeks as well. The North Melbourne factor doesn't seem to be as bad as the other ones. So, but again, like he's had 3 weeks in a row under 100. Surely he goes a big ton this week as well. But whatever it is, it's going to be a premium midfielder I'm bringing in. Just haven't decided which one it is yet. I'll let you know how it goes next week. Anyways, thanks for joining us once again. Checkers, good luck this week. Anything you want to plug before we sign off?
Nah, well, all podcasts I was just getting phone calls about the big game, so it's ramping up. I'll call them all back in a sec. So
yeah,
it's been a 9 to 5 at the moment planning that out. So still haven't got many player announcements. I was meant to do the graphics last night, but actually fell asleep on the lounge. So player announcements are coming tonight. They're coming tonight. I'll get on the computer after this and start loading them up.
Well, I'll make sure I reshare all those and stuff like that, so it gets out into the community. Not that you really need the help with my audience, but anyway, I can support the big game. Looking forward to it. Anyways, we'll leave it at that. Thanks for watching once again, and we'll talk to you next week.